In Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about a graduate student who was engaged in doing the work of understanding the indigenous culture she had inherited. And as she thought about sweetgrass and where it existed and where it had stopped existing, she started listening more and more to the elders that were around her. And there were two different styles of harvesting the sweetgrass. And so she proposed a study in the department of which led to the flourishing of the grass, which harvesting method led to the grass flourishing. And the dean of the department thought this was silly, to put it nicely. The dean of the department said that we all know any harvesting harms the plant. That the plant isn't there to be harvested, it wants to not be harvested. This sense of certainty filled the room. And the student and her professor, Robin, went ahead with the experiment anyway. They learned the two different ways of harvesting the grass. They learned, and they kept one plot unharvested as a control. And by the end of the season, you could see with your own eyes, even though she had all of the data about how many shoots had grown and how many shoots had not grown and what was happening here and there and everywhere in the midst of the sweetgrass. And it turned out that you could tell the grass that had not been harvested was weaker. It wasn't as bright, it wasn't as present. Those plots were almost dying in comparison to the plots where the grass had been harvested. It didn't really matter which strategy, whether it was pulling from the roots or cutting above the soil. Harvesting had served the grass. And she could remember the stories that were passed to her of this gift of an honorable harvest, of only taking 50%, of leaving for others and for nature and the world. And to these scientists, she spoke about the evolution of the grass, how the bison would have pulled from the plains, how this work of harvesting mattered, and how together these species had adapted to need each other. This radical reciprocity that was part of our environment. It is this economy of sharing that she speaks about. And she continues to talk about honorable harvest in other ways. How could we honorably harvest from the world around us, from the communities around us, in a way that doesn't bring harm or domination or violence to the land or other people, but honorably respects this cycle of gift and giving and receiving in and out and through. She tells a story about when there were wild leeks and how she picked maybe half, an honorable harvest, making a small moment of gratitude and offering to the land, and then taking them home. But then she went to a supermarket and she found wild leeks available to sell. And it was something she struggled with. How this gift of the earth became someone else's opportunity, not to give away, not to cook into something that might nourish, but to be sold for their own profit, even as they were harvested in the same hillsides she had been in. And she looked at our economy and about going to the shopping mall, and how can you have an honorable harvest when even the plants are plastic, she says. And that our economy invites us to think about how we live. This gift of reciprocity, this way that we engage our own budgets, our own buying, our own consumption, the ways we're engaged in the world. Jesus spends most of his time talking about money. He spends most of his time talking about how we share or don't share or need to share. And it's not because it's easy to talk about money. It's not because it's really popular to talk about a community's budget and what it says about our community's values. He talks about it because it reminds us what is most important, what we most cherish, that our personal budgets tell us what we most cherish. Our communal budgets tell us what we most value altogether. And maybe it is hard for us individually and communally to look that in the eye and to remember what each line, each purchase, each dollar votes for and says in the world. Here we have Jesus and one of the most famous miracle stories. And he is on a hillside with people. And he looks to the disciples and he says, "You gotta get them some food." And they do not feel good about getting these folks some food. This wasn't in the plan. They're in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere to pick up a chicken dinner. There is no Starbucks. There is no McDonald's. There is nothing for them to share. They maybe have what they brought with them. But the thing that Jesus does is invite them to take those small offerings that they have right there and invites them all to share. It begins with the smallest, most vulnerable person in the community. Simon Peter says, or Andrew, sorry, Simon Peter's brother, says, "There's a kid with some loaves and fishes." And I think he means that sarcastically. And Jesus takes that small offering from a small child, from his ancient Mediterranean lunchbox that his mom packed. And he invites everyone to sit down together. And they break open the bread and they break apart the fish and they share what they have. In some of the narrations, they sit in groups of 50 where they can see one another. Everyone brought a little bit of something, and everyone shares what they brought. And in the end, Jesus teaches them that they already had enough. This isn't a miracle of manna from on high. If it was, that would certainly have been shared. It is the miracle of something more profound where humans actually look one another in the eye, see one another as sacred, and share what they have. Willingly, actively, lovingly. This is the work that Jesus continually teaches over and over and over. It is the work that he continually engages in over and over and over. It is the way the disciples will show up for each other in the book of Acts when they hold all things in common. We live in a country that talks about how we are so Christian in our values. And sometimes we have folks who talk about those Christian values as though it is about posting the 10 Commandments in an elementary school where kids can't even read words yet. Instead of asking the questions that Jesus asks relentlessly, that makes him so vitally unpopular with the people who hold power, which is, how do we make life abundant for everyone? How do we think about our structures to where those who have the most give the most? Those who need the most receive the most? I don't know if Jesus would get into like the tax system and say, I want a regressive tax or a progressive tax or a flat tax. But I think we can ask some hard questions based on the way he lives and acknowledge that there is some alignment we don't have, that there is work for us to do as advocates. There is work for us to do individually and communally about how we show up in this spirit of gratitude and abundance and generosity. The early disciples flourish because they share so wholeheartedly. They live entirely different than the scarcity model of the Roman Empire. And it is hard. And it is so hard and challenging that they become a target of the powerful. So how do we enter into these seasons, these practices? Maybe it starts with us taking a look at our own budgets, at our own statements, at our own credit card statements, at whatever, and asking ourselves, what do I really value? How do I want to show up in the world? How do I want to participate in this economy of an honorable harvest? Where can I find things and shop for things in a way that gives life instead of stealing it? And it is probably almost impossible, or it feels that way, to find a shirt that is made in a responsible, sustainable way. Or to find almost anything. But it doesn't mean that we just give up. It means that we make small choices over and over and over until we have a much larger impact. That we bring all of our small gifts, our seemingly impossible small gifts of time and money and resources together to create something new. In the Service Berry, she talks about this, what we learn from the plants. That the plants need to be harvested, that they're there as a gift. Harvested honorably. And she says, the service berries show us another model, one based on reciprocity rather than accumulation, where wealth and security come from the quality of our relationships, not from the illusion of self-sufficiency. Without gift relationships, the bees and the birds, the service berries, would disappear from the planet. Even if they hoarded their abundance, perched atop the wealth ladder, they would not save themselves from the fate of extinction if their partners did not share in abundance. Hoarding won't save us either. All flourishing is mutual. We are invited. We are invited to share. We're invited to let go. We're invited to remember that our security is knit together in the love and the relationships of one another. May we have the courage to look internally, to look externally, and to seek something more. May it be so. Amen.